5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have arrived in the United States as part of a prisoner swap mediated by Qatar. The release of 4 men and 1 woman was dependent on the transfer of $6 billion in Iranian funds earned from selling oil to South Korea to banks in Doha. U.S. President Joe Biden has long been urged to bring home Americans widely seen as hostages used by Iran as bargaining chips. But leading U.S. Republicans and Iranian activists have condemned the swap, saying it will only encourage more hostage-taking. Joining me now for analysis on this controversial prisoner swap is a lecturer of politics, international relations at Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran. Dr. Adediran, thank you for joining us on the news this hour. So there's a question of whether or not this is America paying ransom and the political backlash for U.S. President Joe Biden. Where do you place this latest development?
No, I do not buy that idea. I think that there is a long history of prisoner swaps. There is a long history of countries unfreezing assets, as it were. Do not forget that the U.S. is not paying Iran money, as it were. It is unfreezing accounts that held in South Korean currency, where South Korea bought Iranian oil, and the money was not remitted back to Iran as part of a wide range of sanctions placed on the Iranian regime. So on one hand, it is clear that there are controversies, as you have mentioned, especially from the Republican side. And we should not also forget that this is part of the sort of the politicking that is always going on in the U.S. In 2015-16, when the Obama administration engaged in something similar, released Iranian funds, $1.7 billion at that time, back to Iran as part of the JCPOA agreement. This kind of vituperations and anger was seen from the Israeli government and from the Republicans. So I'm not surprised by this at all.
So the Republicans think it's a bad idea that it would lead to more kidnapping. How sharply divided do you think Americans are on this one, or you think it's just a political division?
Well, I think that historically Americans have always, especially Republicans, have always been hardliners. They want to stand. They want to give the impression that they do not, accept any form of any attempt to reconcile or show any kind of form of conciliation with the Iranian regime. And as I said, this is part of the normal games of politicking. Republicans will stand steadfast and reject any actions by a democratic government, and it will be vice versa. So I do not see that this is anything special other than a game of politicking. But I think that what is more important for us to focus on, and for Americans to focus on, is the fact that the individuals at the center of this, especially the Americans, and the 4 Americans and the 1 British person that has been brought on. These are individuals who, in some instances, I'm not saying most instances, are innocent of the charges that were brought to them by the Iranian regime. And they get to reunite with their families. And this is the important thing. So the human aspect of it should not be neglected and should not be completely sidestepped.
Well, the Biden administration is also reacting to this criticism, saying that the monies that have now been released will be used for humanitarian purpose. The question of whether or not America has the right to tell how this money will be spent, because we've heard from the Iranian Foreign Ministry saying it has total access to the states. Can America necessarily decide how Iran spends this fund?
It will be difficult, although as part of the agreement that was brokered by South Korea, Qatar, and Switzerland, part of it means that Qatar would hold the funds, and when those funds are going to be released, they're going to be released under very strict guidelines to purchase agricultural products, to purchase medicines, to purchase very specific humanitarian provisions, as you've mentioned. But the question is that down the line, this is a lot of money. This is $6 billion, and it will not be drawn down in a day. So down the line, over the next couple of years, will there still be the same kind of oversight on how this money is spent? And that becomes a question that nobody can answer. But I think that under the current agreement that was brokered, Qatar is supposed to help hold all of the money and release it when there are verifications that it is being disbursed for humanitarian purposes.
So this is the first deal that U.S. President Biden is sealing with the clerical leaders in Iran. Does it in any way give the sign that there's still hope in sight with renewing the 2015 nuclear deal?
Well, the JCPOA conversations are still ongoing on the JCPOA, but there has not been any significant movement on that since July 2022. I think that there is a whole lot of bad blood between the Iranians and the Americans. I think that there is also a sense that the Iranians are always also waiting for the next elections because who becomes the next American president determines a lot on how quickly this deal can move. You know that there's an elections on the horizon in America next year, and if Trump comes in, then it throws any deal that is agreed under the bus once again. So I think that on one hand, this deal allows two historic rivalries and enemies to have some form of diplomatic engagement. But I think that also, while it might not have specific ramifications for the JCPOA, as it were, there are also tensions that are continuing, especially in the Strait of Hormuz, where there are new calls for America to sort of safeguard the seas around that area. So it might have more implications for that than the JCPOA, in my opinion.
So Biden says he will continue to impose sanctions, on Iran. But I'm just wondering, if you put the political risks on a side of the way and the goodwill of reuniting, American citizens with their families, which would you say weigh more for President Biden as we speak?
Well, the honest part of it is that these things are always part of the political rhetoric. And unfortunately, I think that the Republicans are going to use this against the Democrats, as they did with Obama in 2015. You remember that Trump used this to show that the Obama administration was not strong enough on Iran, and he was going on top, basically claiming that he was going to immediately remove America from the JCPOA, which we thought was a bad deal, and he did that immediately. So I think that this is going to, factor into the next elections again. Unfortunately, especially also given that there are indications that Iran has managed to get to almost 60% enrichment of its uranium. And so what I'm also interested in is how does Israel react to this particular prisoner swap and cash transfer, and how all of these things will play in the next elections is a factor that one has to look out for. But I think that in all, yes, it is good that Americans have reunited with their families, but for the sake of politics, and I think this is slightly bad for the Democrats, especially Joe Biden.
Interested days ahead of the Biden administration. Lecturer of Politics and International Relations, Liverpool Hope University in London, Dr. Bola Adediran. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.